We pray for you, Megan. May you rest in peace.
The scream echoed across the empty field, sharp and painful, cutting through the cold night air like broken glass. Officer Daniel Ricks froze where he stood, his flashlight trembling in his hand. The beam of light shook over the tall dry grass of the open lot behind the railroad track. His stomach tightened. He had been an officer for 8 years, and he knew the sound of terror when he heard it. But this scream felt different. It felt like the kind that came when a life slipped away. And then, silence. Nothing moved. Not the wind. Not the grass. Not the sky. The stillness made the hair on the back of his neck stand straight up. His lungs felt heavy, almost refusing to breathe as he listened for anything. Another shout, a cry for help, even footstep. But there was nothing. The quietness was thick and chilling, like something terrible had already happened, and the night itself was holding its breath. "Dispatch, I heard something," Officer Ricks whispered into his radio, not taking his eyes off the darkness. Sounded like a female scream. Very close. Checking the perimeter now. He stepped forward, slowly, carefully, pushing the grass aside with his boot. His flashlight followed. That was when he saw it. A foot. There. Pale. Not moving. His heart dropped. He pointed the light higher, hand shaking harder now. The beam revealed the outline of a young woman's body lying face down in the dry grass. Her hair was long, brown, tangled like it had been dragged through the dirt. Her clothes were torn. Her skin was bruised. The earth around her looked disturbed, as if she had tried to fight her way out. Officer Ricks swallowed hard and whispered, almost breathless, "Oh my God, Megan Holloway." The name hit him like a punch because he recognized her instantly. Posters of her missing face were still taped to every lamppost in town. Her smile haunted every grocery store entrance, every school hallway, every cafe bulletin board. She was the 21-year-old college senior who vanished only 2 nights ago after leaving a friend's apartment at 1:12 a.m. And now she was here, broken, alone, silent. Officer Ricks took a step closer, kneeling slowly beside her. He didn't want to, but training forced him to check. He reached for her wrist. No pulse. He checked her neck. Nothing. He looked at her face, eyes half open, staring at nothing at all. This wasn't just a missing person case anymore. This was murder. And as he leaned closer, his flashlight caught something beneath her, the edge of a ripped shirt sleeve clenched tightly in her fist. He gently opened her hand. Inside it was a scrap of fabric, dark, thick, like the sleeve of a hoodie. And on it was something even more important. A smear of blood. Not Megan's. "Dispatch," Officer Ricks said, voice cracking. "Get detectives here now. This is a crime scene. She's been found." But before he could finish speaking, a sharp sound snapped in the darkness, like a twig breaking. Officer Ricks swung around, shining the flashlight toward the source. The beam caught the outline of a figure standing between the trees at the edge of the field. Tall, wide shoulders, hooded sweatshirt. He couldn't see the face, but he could feel the stare, cold, as if whoever it was had been watching him the entire time. Then, in one quick motion, the figure turned and ran. "Hey! Stop!" Officer Ricks shouted, sprinting forward. But the figure was fast, too fast. Within seconds, they vanished into the shadows of the woods behind the tracks. Officer Ricks chased but quickly lost sight. The darkness swallowed everything. He stopped, panting hard, fear pounding in his chest. Whoever had been standing there had returned to the scene. And they were still close, maybe watching, maybe waiting. But for what? To hide evidence? To see if anyone found her? Or something worse? As he walked back toward Megan's body, one thing became clear. This was not a random attack. This was not a simple crime of chance. Something bigger was hiding behind her death. Something twisted, something planned, something that would shake the whole state and soon force lawmakers to rewrite rules that had been untouched for decades. And whatever change would come, it would come because of her. because of what happened to Megan Holloway. And because of the person who did this. The person who was still out there, watching. 12 hours earlier, the world still believed Megan was alive. 12 hours earlier, her mother, Linda, had paced the living room of their small white house on Willow Ridge Street, holding her phone so tightly her knuckles turned white. "This isn't like her, Detective," she kept repeating to Detective Claire Donovan, who sat across from her. "Megan doesn't disappear. She doesn't ignore calls. She doesn't walk alone at night unless she has to. Something is wrong." Detective Donovan took notes calmly, but inside she felt the same worry. Cases like these always hit her hard. Young women disappearing after a late night walk rarely ended well. But she didn't want to scare Megan's mother, not yet. "When was the last time anyone heard from her?" Donovan asked. 1:18 a.m., Linda answered. She texted her roommate saying she was walking home from Olivia's apartment. "It should have been a 10-minute walk." 10 minutes. Linda's voice cracked. "But she never made it." Detective Donovan nodded. "And you said you drove the entire route yourself?" "Yes," Linda whispered. 3 times. No sign of her. That was when Megan's father, Michael, walked in, face red from crying, eyes hollow. He held Megan's favorite denim jacket in his hands, gripping it like a lifeline. "I found this," he said quietly, "in the street near Forest Avenue." Detective Donovan's stomach tightened. "Where exactly?" "In the gutter, like it fell off while she was struggling with someone." He handed the jacket to her. One sleeve was torn. A button was missing. This was not good. Detective Donovan looked at both parents and said gently, "I'm not going to lie to you. This does not look like a normal disappearance. We're treating this as a possible abduction." Linda burst into tears, falling into her husband's arms. Detective Donovan stood. "I'll find her, whatever it takes." But she didn't know yet that it would already be too late. She didn't know that Megan was already lying in that field. She didn't know that Megan had fought desperately, leaving behind the torn fabric that would become the single most important piece of evidence in the entire case. And she didn't know that Megan's death would soon lead to a courtroom battle, a national outrage, and a new law that would change how violent criminals were tracked forever. All she knew was that she had a missing girl, and time was running out. At the same moment Megan's parents were praying for any kind of miracle, 2 teenagers, Aaron Blake and Jacob Turner, were walking home from a party on Ridgewood Lane. They were laughing, talking, and stumbling a little, still tipsy from the cheap beer they shouldn't have been drinking. "Dude, your mom's gonna kill you when she smells your breath," Jacob joked. Aaron laughed. "Nah, I'll just..." He stopped. Jacob bumped into him. "What's your problem?" "Shoo." Aaron raised a finger. They both stood still. A strange sound drifted through the air, a muffled thump, then another, then a soft cry. Jacob frowned. "What was that?" Aaron pointed toward the tree line near the railroad track. "I think it came from over there." Jacob shook his head. "Nope. No way. We're not doing this. That's where people say weird stuff happens." But then a scream, loud, sharp, terrified, ripped through the night. Both boys froze, eyes wide, hearts racing. "Oh my God," Aaron whispered. "Someone's in trouble." Jacob grabbed his arm. "Dude, don't go over there." But Aaron was already running. That scream, it didn't sound normal. It sounded like someone begging to live. Jacob followed him, swearing under his breath. They reached the tracks, the tall grass brushing their legs. The moon lit the area just enough to make out shape. Then, another noise. A rustling. Heavy breathing. A shadow moving fast. "Who's there?" Aaron shouted. No answer. The shadow turned and bolted deeper into the woods. Jacob backed up immediately. "Nope, nope. I'm calling the cops." He dialed 911 with shaking hands. 911, what's your emergency?" "There's someone screaming near the tracks on East Briar Road." Jacob stammered. "And someone else just ran into the woods. Please, send someone." They didn't know this call would later become a crucial part of the investigation. They didn't know they had arrived seconds after Megan's last fight. They didn't know the person they saw running was the same person Officer Ricks would later chase. By the time police arrived, the boys had already been escorted away, shaking and crying. They would never forget that scream. It would echo in their dreams for months, and it would become one of the most important clues investigators ever had. Now, standing over Megan's body hours later, Officer Ricks closed his eyes for a moment. He felt guilt weigh heavy on his chest. He wished he had gotten there sooner. He wished he had been closer, faster, anything that might have changed the outcome. But the quiet night around him whispered back the truth he didn't want to hear. He was too late, and somewhere out there, a dangerous man was walking free. Maybe even walking towards someone else. Maybe even planning his next attack. Officer Ricks turned toward the woods again, and that was when he saw it. A second footprint, deep, heavy, fresh, and heading straight toward the creek. His heart jumped. He wasn't alone. Someone else was here, watching him, right now. Before he could radio for help, a loud crack echoed through the trees, like a branch snapping under a heavy boot. Officer Ricks lifted his flashlight, and something moved behind him, fast. Officer Ricks spun around so fast his flashlight slipped from his hand and dropped into the grass. The beam rolled wildly across the ground, making shadows twist like living things. His pulse slammed in his throat. He tried to steady his breathing, but the panic hit him hard. He was alone in the dark with a killer who had already proven what he was capable of. "Who's there?" Ricks shouted, pulling his gun slowly, carefully, trying not to show how badly his hands were shaking. No answer. Only the sound of crickets and his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. He took one step backward. The grass rustled behind him again, closer this time. Sharp, quick, like someone was crouched low and circling him. "Don't play games," Ricks yelled. "Come out now." Still nothing. The silence felt wrong. Too controlled. Too calculated. And then he remembered the footprint, the fresh one, leading toward the creek. Whoever killed Megan was still here. Hiding. Watching. Waiting. Officer Ricks crouched and grabbed his flashlight again, raising it toward the trees. He swept the beam slowly, searching for any shape, any movement, any sign of the person who had taken Megan Holloway's life. But the woods looked empty, like the night had swallowed everything whole. He swallowed hard, forcing himself to breathe. He wasn't a rookie. He had handled armed suspects, violent fights, dangerous stands. But this was different. There was something terrifying about facing someone who had just murdered a young woman and stayed close enough to watch the discovery. That meant confidence. That meant boldness. That meant danger. "Dispatch," Ricks whispered into his radio, trying to keep his voice calm. "I need backup at my location. Suspect is possibly still on scene." Static answered him at first. Then a voice crackled back. "Units are en route. ETA 8 minutes. 8 minutes. 8 minutes alone with a killer nearby." Ricks swallowed again. Hard. He lifted his flashlight and took a step toward the footprint trail, when suddenly, something metallic glinted in the beam. A knife. Half buried near the edge of the grass. A long, heavy kitchen knife with dried blood crusted across the blade. His chest clenched. This was a major breakthrough, maybe the murder weapon itself. He crouched slowly, careful not to disturb anything. The handle was wrapped in black cloth, like someone had tried to hide fingerprints. But the cloth was frayed, maybe torn in the struggle, maybe connected to the piece of fabric Megan had died holding. Ricks leaned in closer. Snap. The sound came from behind him. Very close. Way too close. He spun around instantly, gun raised. But there was nothing there. Just darkness. Darkness that felt alive. Rick's skin prickled. Cold sweat rolled down his back. He felt watched, intensely watched, like eyes were locked onto him from somewhere in the trees. He raised his voice again. "Stop hiding. Show yourself." A deep grunt echoed behind a large oak tree. A low, angry sound. A warning. Rix raised his gun higher. "Don't move." But then the grunt turned into footsteps, fast, heavy, pounding against the ground, charging straight toward him. Rix fired one warning shot into the air. "Stop or I shoot." The footsteps didn't stop. They got louder, closer. Rix braced himself, and then, out of nowhere, a massive shape burst from the shadows and sprinted past him so fast the wind slapped him in the face. He spun, pointing his gun at the fleeing figure, but the trees swallowed them almost instantly. He couldn't see enough to shoot, couldn't get a clear target. He ran forward 3 steps, but the darkness was too thick. The figure vanished into it like smoke disappearing into air. He stopped, breathing hard, hands shaking uncontrollably. He had almost been attacked. He had almost died. And the killer had escaped again. But now Rix knew something he hadn't known before. A detail that shook him to his core. The killer wasn't small, wasn't scared, wasn't desperate. The killer was big, strong, fast, and bold enough to come back to the crime scene and run straight toward an armed police officer. That meant this wasn't someone used to being caught. This was someone who thought no one could catch him at all. While police sirens echoed faintly in the distance, Detective Claire Donovan was driving fast toward the field. Her headlights cut through the early morning mist, and her hands gripped the wheel tight. She had gotten the call only 2 minutes earlier. A body had been found, and it matched Megan's description. Her heart had dropped, but she didn't allow herself to react. Not yet. She had learned to keep her emotions locked until the truth was in front of her, until she saw the victim herself, until she was certain of what had happened. But deep down, she already knew. The jacket, the torn sleeve, the boy's 911 call, the silent streets, everything pointed toward a terrible ending. Her phone rang. She answered quickly. "Donovan." It was Sergeant Miller. "Claire, you need to prepare yourself. It's her." She closed her eyes just for a second. Not because she was surprised, but because she hated being right. "How bad?" she asked. "Bad," Miller said. "You'll see when you get here. And Officer Rix says the suspect might still be on scene." Claire's heart jumped. Still on scene. Yes, he thinks he saw him. Almost ran into him. She pressed harder on the gas. "I'm 2 minutes out. Tell Rix not to go chasing suspects in the dark alone. The last thing I need is 2 bodies." "Copy." The call ended. Claire's mind spun with questions. If the killer stayed close, that meant he felt safe here. That meant he knew the area. That meant he knew the police response time. That meant he had confidence, maybe arrogance. It also meant he might live nearby. She gripped the wheel tighter. Who would do this to a 21-year-old student walking home? Who would be bold enough to come back after killing her? Who would think they could outrun the police twice? There was only one kind of person like that. A repeat offender. Someone who had done this before. Someone who would do it again. Someone the law had failed to track. A chill ran down her spine. This case would not end quietly. This case would explode into a storm. This case would make lawmakers argue on television. This case would shine a harsh light on flaws in the system everyone thought was working. And Megan Holloway would become the name everyone remembered. The girl whose death forced a change. The girl who didn't survive, but made sure others would. Claire swallowed hard as she pulled up to the field. Police lights flashed everywhere. Officers were taping the perimeter. Paramedics were standing still, waiting, not rushing, which told her everything she needed to know. She stepped out of her car and walked toward Officer Rick. He looked shaken, pale, sweaty, eyes wide. "You okay?" Claire asked carefully. Rix nodded once, but his voice cracked when he spoke. "He was here, Detective. Right here. I almost grabbed him." Claire's stomach tightened. "Describe him." "Tall, broad shoulders, fast. He didn't run like a scared guy, he ran like someone trained. Like he knew these woods." Claire nodded slowly. "Local, then?" Rick swallowed. "Detective," he waited. He watched me. He wasn't leaving until I found her. That part disturbed Claire more than anything. A killer lingering to see the discovery of his crime? That was psychological. That was about power. That meant they weren't dealing with a panicked stranger. They were dealing with a predator. Claire took a deep breath and walked toward the body. She knelt down just like Officer Ricks had. She didn't touch anything. She just looked. Megan's face, her torn clothes, her bruises, the scraped ground from the struggle, the piece of fabric in her hand. Claire had seen many crime scenes in her career, but this one hit harder. She had just promised Megan's mother she would find her daughter, but she hadn't expected to find her like this. She fought back, Claire whispered. Ricks nodded. Hard. The fabric in her hand looks like part of the killer's sleeve. Claire stared at it carefully. This could save the case. What she didn't know yet was that the laws around DNA testing in the state were outdated and slow, and the fight to test this tiny scrap of cloth would soon lead to courtroom drama, national arguments, and eventually, the law that would change because of Megan. But that was in the future. For now, they only had questions, and a killer who had almost attacked an officer before escaping. Claire stood up. Call in the K9 unit. If he's bleeding, the dogs will pick up his trail. Ricks nodded and stepped away to radio in the request. Claire took one last look at Megan's still body. I'll get justice for you, she whispered. It was a promise, a heavy one that would come with a price. Meanwhile, at the Holloway home, the morning sky was pale pink, but inside the house everything felt dark and heavy. Linda Holloway sat on the couch, hands clasped tightly, rocking slightly without realizing it. Her husband, Michael, sat beside her, staring at the floor. The knock on the door made them both jump. They looked at each other. Michael stood slowly and opened it. Detective Donovan stepped inside. She didn't speak at first. She didn't need to. The look on her face said everything. Linda let out a sound that didn't even seem human. Half scream, half sob, half collapse. She fell into Michael's arms, shaking violently. Michael held her tight, his own face crumbling. We knew, he whispered. We knew. Detective Donovan moved closer, her voice gentle. I'm so sorry. We found her. Linda's knees buckled, and she dropped to the floor, screaming her daughter's name. Detective Donovan felt a tear slip from her eye, but she wiped it quickly. This was the part of the job she never got used to. The part that broke something inside her every time. Linda lifted her head, eyes red and wide. Who did this? Who hurt my baby? Detective Donovan hesitated. We don't know yet, but we're going to find him. Linda's cry turned into rage. Find him? Don't find him, catch him. Lock him. Make him pay. Don't let him do this to another girl. Detective Donovan nodded. We won't. I promise you. But promises in cases like this were dangerous. Sometimes they became heavy chains around a detective's neck. Chains that pulled hard until justice came or the whole case fell apart. Claire didn't know yet that this promise would drag her into the biggest legal fight she had ever seen. A fight that would change the state's laws forever. But for now, she had a killer to chase. Back at the crime scene, K9 units finally arrived. The dogs sniffed the torn fabric, then the knife, then the ground. Within seconds, they pulled hard toward the creek. Ricks tightened the leash. He went this way. Claire nodded. Let them lead. They followed the dogs along the water, through the mud, into thick brush. The dogs barked loudly, pulling hard, tugging officers deeper into the woods. The trail was strong. Then it stopped. Right at the edge of the old wooden bridge. Claire frowned. Why did they stop? The K9 officer looked confused. The scent ends here. Like he vanished. Claire scanned the area. The creek rushed under the bridge, fast and deep with winter melt. She stepped closer. Something was caught in the wood. A shoelace. Black. Torn. Still wet. The killer had crossed the creek. And they had missed him by minutes. Claire clenched her jaw. This man was smart. Very smart. He knew how to hide trails, how to lose police, How to avoid being caught. This wasn't someone committing his first violent crime. This was someone who should have been caught years ago, if the law had allowed police to test certain DNA samples sooner. And that failure had cost Megan her life. But that truth was still hidden. For now. Claire held up the shoelace. Bag this. This is not over. She didn't know how right she was. Because miles away, in a small apartment on Riverbend Road, a man stood in his bathroom, washing blood off his hands, breathing hard, staring at himself in the mirror. His reflection stared back with cold, empty eyes. He wiped his hands on a towel and smiled. "You're not catching me," he whispered. Then he dropped something into the trash. A piece of torn sleeve, matching the one Megan had died holding. But that wasn't the chilling part. The chilling part was what he reached for next. A new knife, clean, sharp, waiting for his next victim. For the first few seconds after the deputy's flashlight landed on Megan's body, no one spoke. It was as if the whole world froze. The quiet desert wind seemed to stop moving. Even the crickets that had been chirping earlier had gone silent, like nature itself knew something terrible had happened. Megan Holloway lay motionless on the rough ground, the early morning sun barely beginning to rise behind her. Her hair, which her mom always brushed every morning when she was little, was now tangled with dirt and dry weeds. Her clothes were torn. Her skin was marked by bruises number 22-year-old should ever have. The deputy swallowed hard. He had seen awful things in his years on the job, but something about this felt different. Maybe it was how young she looked. Maybe it was how peaceful she seemed, even in such a terrible state. Or maybe it was the feeling in the air, like this was the beginning of something bigger, something that would hurt a lot of people before it was over. He stepped back and whispered, "Oh God!" And that was the moment when Megan Holloway's case stopped being a simple missing person call and became a full-scale homicide investigation. The discovery spread through the Las Cruces Police Department within minutes. Officers who had just returned from long night shifts came back out again. Detectives left their breakfast unfinished. People who weren't even scheduled to work grabbed their keys and rushed in. Everyone felt the same thing. This case was different. Bigger. Worse. Detective Aaron Briggs was the first homicide investigator on scene. He had dark hair that was starting to go gray at the temples, tired eyes, and the kind of voice that stayed calm even in chaos. As he ducked under the yellow crime scene tape, he took a long, steady breath. He needed all the focus he could get. He looked down at Megan, and something inside him tightened. She wasn't just another victim. She wasn't just another name for paperwork. She was a girl walking home from a party, thinking she would be safe in her own neighborhood. A girl who trusted the world more than it deserved. "Document everything," Briggs said quietly to the crime scene photographer. "No detail is too small." The photographer nodded and began snapping pictures, the clicks echoing sharply in the still desert morning. Within 30 minutes, the medical examiner arrived. Dr. Raquel Matthews knelt beside Megan, her gloved hands moving carefully, respectfully. "She's been gone for a few hours," Dr. Matthews murmured. "No more than 5. Briggs nodded. That meant Megan had been attacked soon after she left the party. He looked out across the empty desert. Whoever did this had taken Megan away from the busy streets, the lights, the people, and brought her to a place where no one would hear her scream. This wasn't random. This wasn't quick. This was personal. And someone out there knew exactly what they had done. Back in town, word spread fast, way too fast. Las Cruces was small enough that one rumor could travel from the east side to the west side in minutes. By the time Megan's parents, Dan and Lisa Holloway, reached the station, half the town already knew something terrible had happened. Lisa Holloway walked into the lobby clutching her daughter's sweater, the same sweater Megan had left the house wearing. Her hands shook so badly that the sleeves trembled like leaves in a storm. Dan held her shoulders, trying to keep her steady. He looked like every father who had ever gotten the call he prayed would never come, lost, broken, and angry at the world. "Please," Lisa whispered to the officer at the front desk. Please tell me my daughter is okay." The officer's eyes dropped to the floor. He didn't have to say a word. Lisa let out a sound no parent should ever have to make. It was raw and painful, the kind of cry that breaks something in the hearts of everyone who hears it. Dan swallowed hard, his jaw tightening as tears streamed down his face. He didn't scream. He didn't collapse, but the way he closed his eyes said everything. Their world had ended. Detective Briggs stepped forward slowly, softly. "Mr. and Mrs. Holloway," he said. "I'm Detective Briggs. I'm so sorry. We're going to find who did this. I promise you." Dan looked at him, really looked at him, and nodded. "Bring her justice," he whispered. "Whatever it takes." Briggs nodded. "We will." The investigation started immediately. Officers canvassed the neighborhood where Megan lived. Detectives interviewed everyone who had been at the party. Megan wasn't a troublemaker. She wasn't someone who got into fights or arguments. She worked part-time at a local bakery and had dreams of going to law school. She was smart, kind, careful. So how did she end up dead in the middle of the desert? That was the question that kept looping in Detective Briggs' head like a broken record. One witness, a girl named Haley, told Briggs that she last saw Megan around 1:15 a.m. She said she was gonna walk home, Haley explained, wiping her eyes. "I told her I could call someone, but she said she was fine. She always walked home. She wasn't drunk or anything. She looked normal." Normal. The word stung. Briggs wrote down the details. Every minute mattered now. Every second between Megan leaving the party and being found was a clue. The street where she walked home was lit, busy, and usually safe. A truck rolled by every few minutes. Why would someone target her there? Unless they weren't a stranger. Unless they were someone she trusted enough to get into a car with. Briggs felt his chest tighten. He hated cases like this. Cases where the killer wasn't some random monster, but someone who could hide behind a smile. Someone who could walk through the grocery store unnoticed. Someone who could drive past the Holloway's house, and no one would even think to look twice. He needed answers. Fast. When the autopsy started, Dr. Matthews called Briggs into the room almost immediately. "We found something," she said. Briggs stepped close. "What is it?" Dr. Matthews held up an evidence swab, sealed tight. "There's DNA." Briggs felt hope rush through him. DNA. That was the key. That was the one thing killers could never hide forever. One strand of hair. One touch. One mistake. Anything could bring them down. "Run it," Briggs said. "Urgent priority." Dr. Matthews nodded, already preparing the samples. As Briggs walked out of the exam room, he felt something he hadn't felt since this case started. Momentum. Maybe, just maybe, they were about to catch a break. But breaks don't always come easy. That same afternoon, Briggs received a call from the state crime lab. "This is about the Holloway sample," the tech said. Briggs straightened. "Yes." There was a pause. A long one. "Detective," the tech finally said, "we got a full DNA profile." "That's great. Do we have a match?" Another pause. "No," the tech said. "No match. The suspect isn't in our system. Not local. Not state. Not federal." Briggs felt his stomach drop. No match meant no arrest record, no past convictions, no previous samples on file. Whoever killed Megan had never been caught before, or had never been tested. He was a ghost. A ghost who had taken Megan's life and left almost nothing behind. Almost. "We'll keep searching," the tech said. "We'll expand the search to national databases. But right now, we've got nothing." Briggs closed his eyes. Nothing. He hated that word. But the worst part wasn't the lack of a match. The worst part was the feeling in his gut. The one that whispered this wasn't random. This wasn't a one-time thing. This was the kind of killer who didn't stop after one victim. And if they didn't find him soon, someone else could be next. 2 days later, just when the investigation seemed to be moving too slowly, something happened. Something that slapped the entire police department awake. A woman walked into the station, shaking, crying, terrified. I think the man who hurt that girl," she stammered. "I think he tried to take me too." Detective Briggs rushed her into a private room. "What's your name?" he asked gently. "Hannah," she whispered. "Hannah Pierce." Her hands trembled so badly she could barely hold her water bottle. "Tell me what happened, Hannah," Briggs said. She took a shaky breath. "It was last week. I didn't say anything because I thought maybe I imagined it. I was walking home from work. A man in a silver pickup slowed down beside me. He asked if I needed a ride. I said no. Then he kept following me. I started running." Briggs leaned forward. "Did you get a good look at him?" I got a look at his eyes," she whispered. "Dark, empty. Like he wasn't really there." Briggs felt a chill run through him. "Why didn't you report this earlier?" he asked softly. Because I didn't think he'd actually hurt someone," she said, tears spilling over. "But when I heard about Megan, I knew it was him." Briggs nodded slowly. "This was big. Huge." "And detective," Hannah whispered, voice breaking. "Yes. I think I saw him again last night. Near my apartment." Briggs' blood froze. This man wasn't hiding. He was watching, hunting, waiting. "Hannah," Briggs said firmly, "we're moving you to protective housing. Right now. You're not staying at your place." Hannah nodded quickly, fear all over her face. Briggs stood, grabbed his radio, and called for immediate backup and transport. But before he could finish speaking into the radio, a call came through the station emergency line. A call that made every officer on duty go still. A call reporting something so urgent, so dangerous, so familiar, that the entire station snapped into motion at once. "Shots fired," the dispatcher said. "Possible abduction attempt. Suspect fleeing in a silver pickup." Briggs' heart slammed in his chest. Silver pickup. The same description. The same man. He was striking again, right now. And this time, he wasn't running away quietly. He was armed. And someone's life was hanging in the balance. Briggs grabbed his keys, ran for his car, and sped toward the scene with lights blazing. But when he turned onto the dirt road given by dispatch, he saw something he had prayed he would never see again. A trail of tire marks, a drop of blood, a shoe lying in the dust, and no sign of the victim, or the man who had taken her. The killer had struck again, and this time, he had vanished into the night. Detective Briggs slammed the car door and ran toward the last known location of the silver pickup. Dust rose around his boots as he sprinted across the uneven ground. His radio crackled constantly, officers reporting sightings, roadblocks, and dead ends. But the man in the silver pickup, Megan Holloway's killer, had vanished again. It was as if he had slipped into thin air, leaving nothing but fear behind. Briggs' mind raced. Every piece of evidence, every report, every sighting told the same story. This man was meticulous, patient, and relentless. He waited for his victims. He studied them. And then, when the opportunity came, he struck with precision. Megan Holloway had been his latest target, but Hannah Pierce had almost become his next. Briggs stopped at the edge of a narrow dirt path. Tire tracks led down a small ravine that emptied into a creek. Blood smears glistened in the early morning sun, trailing toward the water. Briggs knelt down, examining the ground carefully. "This is recent," he muttered to himself. "Not more than an hour old." He pulled out his phone and snapped photos. Every detail could matter: blood type, footprint depth, direction of movement. He needed every clue possible if they were going to stop this man before he hurt someone else. The creek widened as he followed the tracks, and Briggs noticed broken branches and crushed weeds. Whoever had run here was moving fast, but the trail was still visible. Then he spotted it. A black glove caught in the underbrush, torn at the wrist. He recognized the style immediately. One had been found near Megan's body. Briggs' stomach dropped. The killer was careless only when it suited him. And now he was leaving a trail directly to his next crime, or a trap. "Detective Briggs," a voice called behind him. He turned to see Officer Ramirez, panting and out of breath. "We got a K-9 team en route. Might be able to pick up the scent." Briggs nodded. "Good. But I want eyes on this path too. He might be watching. He's bold enough to ambush anyone who comes close." The two men moved carefully through the brush, eyes scanning every shadow. The wind carried the scent of wet earth and a faint metallic tang, blood. Briggs' pulse raced. He could feel the tension in every muscle. Whoever they were hunting wasn't far. Then, a sudden noise. A twig snapped sharply to their right. Briggs froze, hand on his gun. His flashlight cut through the thick trees. Shadows moved quickly, then disappeared. "Here!" Officer Ramirez shouted, pointing toward a small clearing. Briggs ran forward, and there, lying in the dirt, was Hannah Pierce. She was pale, shaking, her clothes torn and covered in mud. Her eyes were wide with terror. "Detective, he tried to take me," she stammered. I ran into the woods. I don't know how I got here." Briggs knelt beside her, checking quickly for injuries. She was shaken but alive. That was a relief, but it was also frightening. The killer had almost succeeded a second time. Ramirez moved closer, scanning the area. He could still be here. Briggs helped Hannah to her feet. "You're safe now," he said firmly. "We'll get you back to the station. You're not going anywhere alone." But even as they started back toward the vehicles, Briggs' mind stayed focused on the bigger picture. The man who had killed Megan Holloway and almost taken Hannah was not only dangerous, he was methodical, and he would strike again if they didn't catch him fast. Back at the police station, Detective Claire Donovan paced the hallway. The events of the last few days had shaken the department. Megan's death, Hannah's abduction attempt, and the killer's ability to vanish without leaving a solid lead were rattling everyone. Briggs returned with Hannah shortly after noon. She was taken to a safe room, interviewed gently, and then placed in protective custody. Her account was detailed. He had driven a silver pickup, followed her quietly through back streets, and tried to force her into the vehicle. But she had fought and escaped, disappearing into the dark before he could complete his attack. Her story confirmed what Briggs had feared. Megan's killer was active. He was now bold enough to strike repeatedly, and his audacity suggested he was escalating. Detective Donovan sat in her office, reviewing all evidence. Photos from the scene, witness statements, and crime scene reports were spread across her desk. Her eyes were tired, but she didn't stop scanning. Each detail mattered. Each pattern could reveal who this man was. Then her phone buzzed. It was the crime lab. "Detective Donovan?" the technician said, voice serious. "We've completed a partial DNA match from the fabric Megan held in her hand. It's linked to someone in the national database. Not a perfect match, but it's a starting point." Claire's heart raced. "Who?" "Name's not verified yet," the tech replied. "But the profile matches a previous violent offender who was never convicted fully. Charges were dropped due to lack of evidence years ago. Could be our guy." Claire sat back. A sense of urgency gripped her. This was their first real lead, but it was also a race against time. Every moment the killer remained free, more lives were at risk. She gathered the team. "We have a potential link. I want full background checks, prior addresses, phone records, everything. We're going to find him before he targets anyone else." That evening, the small town of Las Cruces was tense. Residents who had been unaware of the killer's pattern began locking doors, keeping children inside, and reporting suspicious activity. Social media posts warned about a silver pickup and a dangerous man on the loose. Fear spread like wildfire. Meanwhile, Briggs and Donovan were analyzing the suspect's history. He had a violent past, but because charges were dropped, no law required authorities to monitor him closely. This loophole was what allowed him to commit Megan's murder and almost abduct Hannah. It was frustrating, infuriating, and tragic all at once. "We've been looking at him all wrong," Donovan said. "This isn't just about Megan. It's about the system failing to track someone dangerous." This case will change things. Laws, policies, everything. Megan didn't die in vain. Briggs nodded grimly. But first, we have to catch him. Hours later, just past midnight, Officer Ramirez was stationed near the outskirts of the city, watching the rural roads where the silver pickup was last seen. The night was silent, too silent. Every shadow seemed to move. Every distant car engine sounded like it could belong to the killer. Suddenly, headlights appeared in the distance. A truck, silver, moving slowly. Ramirez raised his radio. Unit in sight. Possible suspect. The truck turned off the road toward a wooded area. Ramirez followed cautiously, gun ready. He could see movement inside. Someone was hiding, crouched in the cab. He signaled to nearby units to block escape route. The truck stopped at the edge of a clearing. Ramirez edged closer, flashlight in hand. Then, the man stepped out. Tall, broad-shouldered, hooded sweatshirt, and in his hand a large knife. Ramirez froze. The killer's eyes locked onto him. A slow, deliberate smile spread across his face. "You're too late," the man said calmly, voice low and chilling. Before Ramirez could react, the man ran toward a nearby shed, swinging the knife dangerously. Ramirez fired a warning shot. The man ducked, but the bullet grazed his shoulder. Blood began to run down his arm. He didn't stop. He sprinted through the woods, disappearing into darkness. Ramirez chased him, shouting for backup, but he vanished like smoke. By the time reinforcements arrived, only blood-stained footprints and a half-empty shed remained. The killer had escaped again. And now, more than ever, it was clear. This man was escalating. He had killed once, tried twice, and would not hesitate to strike again. Detective Donovan arrived at the scene minutes later, examining the shed. The blood on the ground, the scattered leaves, and the marks on the door all told the same story. The killer was dangerous, calculating, and untouchable, at least for now. She clenched her jaw. This was not just a crime story. This was a warning. And Megan Holloway's death had already begun its legacy. Laws would change, policies would be rewritten, and Megan's name would echo in courtrooms for years to come. But at that moment, in the quiet of the dark woods, all that mattered was this. The killer was still out there, still armed, still hunting, and next time, he might not let his victim run. The city of Las Cruces woke the next morning to a grim reality. Megan Holloway was gone, Hannah Pierce had narrowly survived, and the silver pickup's driver, the killer, was still at large. The townspeople were tense, locking doors, checking windows, and whispering in grocery stores about who could commit such crimes. Fear had spread faster than the morning sun. Detective Claire Donovan and Detective Aaron Briggs had barely slept. Every lead, every report, every DNA sample seemed to spin them in circles. The killer was clever, careful, and dangerous, but they refused to give up. Every officer on the case knew that this wasn't just about Megan anymore. It was about stopping him before he hurt anyone else. By midday, a breakthrough finally arrived. The state crime lab had completed a full DNA analysis from the torn fabric Megan had held in her hand. The partial match from Chapter 3 had now turned into a confirmed identity. Detective Donovan, the lab technician, said over the phone, voice tense. "We've got him. His name is Carl Everett, age 34. Lives in a small apartment on the west side of town. Previous violent offenses, but all dropped due to procedural errors years ago." Claire felt a surge of adrenaline. "We have an address?" "Yes. Police units are already preparing a raid," the technician replied. Within minutes, Donovan and Briggs coordinated a tactical team. Officers surrounded Everett's apartment building quietly, their movements precise and coordinated. They couldn't afford mistakes. He was armed and had already proven how dangerous he could be. As they approached, Claire's mind raced through the evidence. Megan's body, the chase through the woods, Hannah's escape, the blood-stained shed. Everett was smart, but he had left a trail. DNA, footprints, witnesses. These were enough to bring him down. The tactical team knocked on Everett's door. Silence. They knocked again. Still nothing. Then a faint rustling inside. Police. "Step out with your hands up," one officer shouted. Suddenly, the door swung open. Everett stepped out, his expression calm, almost defiant. A knife glinted in his hand. He made a sudden move toward the stairwell. "Freeze!" Donovan yelled. But he didn't stop. One officer fired a warning shot into the ceiling. Everett faltered, and Donovan saw her chance. She tackled him to the ground, twisting his arm behind his back. He struggled violently, but the team quickly restrained him and removed the knife. Breathing heavily, Claire looked down at Everett. He was alive, but finally captured. The man who had terrorized the city, who had taken Megan Holloway's life, who had almost claimed Hannah Pierce, was finally in custody. The Holloway family received the news at home. Lisa Holloway collapsed into her husband's arms, sobbing uncontrollably. He's caught," she whispered over and over, tears streaming down her face. Dan held her tight, finally allowing himself to breathe. Megan's death could not be undone. But knowing her killer would never harm another child brought a small sense of closure. It was bitter and painful, but it was something. The legal proceedings began almost immediately. Carl Everett was charged with Megan Holloway's murder, the attempted abduction of Hannah Pierce, and several other prior offenses that had never been prosecuted due to procedural errors. The court case was intense, filled with testimony from witnesses, forensic experts, and the surviving victim, Hannah. During the trial, it became clear just how close Everett had come to striking again. Hannah described her terrifying encounter, giving the jury a vivid image of the predator who had stalked Megan and almost claimed her life as well. The evidence was overwhelming: DNA matches, bloodied items, tire tracks, and eyewitness accounts. The prosecution argued fiercely that Everett's prior offenses had been ignored due to loopholes in state law and outdated procedures. These legal gaps allowed him to continue preying on young women, culminating in Megan Holloway's tragic death. The defense tried to argue technicalities, but the evidence was damning. Every officer, every detective, every forensic specialist had testified to the precision, cunning, and danger Everett posed. After a tense deliberation, the jury reached a verdict: guilty on all charges. The courtroom erupted in subdued relief, though grief still hung heavy in the air. Everett was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, ensuring he would never harm another person. Beyond the courtroom, Megan Holloway's story had already begun to make waves. Lawmakers and public officials took notice of the gaps in the legal system that allowed Everett to evade justice for so long. Within months, new legislation was proposed in the state of New Mexico to prevent similar failures. The law required that all DNA evidence from violent offenders be entered into the national database, regardless of whether charges had previously been dropped or cases dismissed due to technicalities. It also allowed for more rapid processing of evidence in homicide cases, ensuring that investigative leads were followed swiftly. Megan Holloway's death, tragic as it was, became the catalyst for these legal reforms. Her case taught the system that loopholes could cost lives, and that even one preventable oversight could have devastating consequences. Detective Donovan reflected on this as she left the courthouse one evening. She thought of Megan, of Hannah, of the countless young women whose lives were now safer because the law had changed. She felt a mix of grief, relief, and determination. Megan's life had been cut short, but her death had sparked a legacy that would protect others. The Holloway family also became involved in advocacy. Lisa and Dan started a foundation in Megan's name, focusing on raising awareness about personal safety, stalking, and legal reforms. They spoke publicly about Megan's life, her dreams, and the tragic events that took her away. They lobbied for better law enforcement training and faster evidence processing, ensuring that Megan's story would continue to make an impact. Hannah Pierce, who survived thanks to her bravery and the swift response of law enforcement, became a spokesperson for young women in the community. She worked alongside the Holloways to educate peers about staying safe, and reporting suspicious behavior. The town slowly began to heal, but the memory of Megan Holloway remained vivid in every corner. Even months later, when the media covered the trial's aftermath, people still remembered Megan. Streets were quieter, safety protocols stricter, and community vigilance stronger. Parents checked in on children more frequently. Young women walked in groups. Law enforcement agencies had updated procedures. Megan Holloway's name became synonymous with vigilance, reform, and courage. The case reminded everyone that tragedy could spark change, that one young woman's death could prevent countless others. Detective Donovan kept a small photo of Megan on her desk, a reminder of why she became a detective, why she fought tirelessly in every case. Megan's life was brief, but the justice and change that followed her death ensured she would never be forgotten. Years later, when people in Las Cruces spoke about Megan Holloway, they didn't only speak of her death. They spoke of her courage, the bravery of those who survived, and the justice that followed. They spoke of a law changed because one young woman's life mattered. The silver pickup driver, Carl Everett, remained behind bars for life. The law now protected others from individuals like him. And the Holloways, through advocacy and awareness, kept Megan's memory alive in every lecture, every campaign, and every moment of vigilance they inspired. Megan's death had been horrifying, but it had sparked a movement, a reminder that the law could evolve, that justice could be restored, and that the memory of one young woman could change the world. Detective Briggs and Claire Donovan often reflected on the case. They knew they had seen evil, but they also saw hope. They had brought a killer to justice, helped a survivor reclaim her life, and contributed to legal reforms that would prevent future tragedies. Sometimes, when the night was quiet, Claire would think back to that first morning when Megan's body was found in the desert. The panic, the heartbreak, the fear, it all seemed overwhelming. But justice had been served. Megan's story, though tragic, became a story of courage, reform, and change. And though her life was taken too soon, Megan Holloway would always be remembered, not just as a victim, but as the spark for change, a symbol of hope, and a reminder that even in tragedy, justice can prevail.